The worst insult of my life happened in a crowded restaurant, with my own sister standing across from me and telling everyone that I was useless. She said I had never accomplished anything, that I was living off other people, and that nobody important would ever take me seriously. People laughed. I wanted to disappear. But then the restaurant doors opened. Her powerful boss walked in, looked straight at me, and shook my hand like I was the most important person in the room. Stick with me while I share my story. And if it touches you, don't forget to support our channel by hitting that subscribe button, dropping a like, and sharing it with the people you care about. My name is Marla Whitaker, and I was 31 years old. That evening, I sat at a long table surrounded by relatives who had known me my whole life. The dinner was supposed to celebrate Blythe. She had recently received a promotion, and she made sure everyone knew how important her new position was. I smiled, listened, and congratulated her. Then my aunt turned toward me. "So, Marlo, what have you been working on lately?" Before I could answer, Blythe laughed. "Oh, she's still playing around with that little business of hers." A few people smiled. I looked at my plate. Blythe leaned back in her chair. She left a perfectly good corporate job and now thinks she's some kind of business expert. I took a slow breath. "I'm doing fine, Blythe." She laughed louder. "Fine? Marlo, you're useless when it comes to real life." The table went quiet for a moment. Then someone gave an uncomfortable laugh. My face burned. I had spent years helping this woman whenever she needed me, yet she could embarrass me in front of our entire family without hesitation. I pushed my chair back. That was when the restaurant doors opened. Blythe suddenly stopped talking. I looked up. Everett Calloway, the man she had been praising all evening, had just walked inside. He saw me. Then he walked straight toward my chair. And before I could say a word, he reached out his hand. Long before that dinner, Blythe had a habit of turning small problems into someone else's responsibility. I had seen it many times. When she was applying to college, I helped her organize her papers and deadlines. When she struggled with money, I quietly covered bills she promised to repay. When she needed a ride, I was usually the person she called. Even before her first job interview, I spent several evenings helping her prepare answers and practice speaking with confidence. I never expected a reward. I only wanted my sister to do well. But Blythe slowly began treating my help as something she deserved. If she made a mistake, I was expected to fix it. If something went wrong, she always had an explanation that made someone else responsible. Our parents, Graham and Lenora, didn't see the pattern clearly. They were proud of Blythe because her life looked impressive from the outside. She dressed well, talked confidently, and worked for Callaway Meridian Group. Whenever we visited, she talked about her job and her boss, Everett Calloway. She spoke as if the company depended on her. I usually stayed quiet. I knew confidence and ability were not always the same thing. While Blythe was building her image, I was building something of my own. I had started a small consulting business, focused on helping companies improve their daily operations. I studied where businesses wasted time, money, and effort, then created simple systems to fix those problems. My office was just a small room in my apartment. There was no expensive furniture or company car. Most days, it was just me, my laptop, and stacks of notes. Still, I believed in what I was doing. Then one afternoon, an email arrived from a major company. They had a serious internal problem and wanted professional help finding a solution. They asked me to review confidential information and prepare recommendations. I read the message twice. This was exactly the kind of opportunity one had been working toward. What I didn't know was that the company behind that request was connected to the same man Blythe talked about so proudly. Everett Calloway. The opportunity became serious faster than I expected. I spent almost every evening working on it. My dining table disappeared beneath spreadsheets, notes, reports, and financial estimates. I built a plan that could help the company cut waste and improve how its teams worked. For the first time, I could see my business becoming something real. One night, Blythe called me. I made the mistake of sharing the good news. "I think this project could change everything for me," I said. Instead of being happy, she became strangely quiet. "What company?" "I can't tell you everything. They gave me confidential information." "Who introduced you?" "No one. They contacted me." She kept asking questions. I gave her very little, but she was clever enough to connect the pieces. A few days later, I noticed something strange. The company handling my proposal suddenly asked for additional verification. Then another person questioned my experience. I couldn't understand what had happened. Soon, I learned that someone had been telling people that I wasn't qualified for the project. Someone had described me as inexperienced. Someone had even suggested that I had received the opportunity because of family connections. That made no sense. I had earned every part of my career myself. Then the company placed my contract on hold. I sat alone at my desk that night, staring at the email. I felt sick. The next morning, I went to Blythe's apartment. "Did you say anything about my project to people at your company?" She looked offended. "Why would I do that?" "Because people are questioning my qualifications." She crossed her arms. "You're being paranoid, Marlowe. I trusted you." She rolled her eyes. "Not everything that happens to you is about me." I left without arguing. But something inside me had changed. I stopped explaining myself to Blythe. From that day forward, I saved every email, every message, every document, and every conversation connected to the project. If someone was trying to damage my career, I wanted the truth to speak for itself. The dinner was supposed to be about Blythe's promotion. She had invited our parents, a few relatives, and some people from her professional circle. Everyone kept congratulating her. I was happy for her, even after everything that had happened with my project. I decided not to bring up the trouble with my contract. I just wanted a peaceful evening. That didn't last long. Blythe turned toward me with a smile that didn't feel friendly. "So, Marlowe, what happened to that little business of yours?" I kept my voice calm. "I'm still working on an important project." She laughed. "Of course you are." A few relatives looked at each other. Blythe picked up her glass. "She always has some big opportunity coming. Somehow, nothing ever happens." I felt my stomach tighten. I didn't answer. She continued. "That's Marlowe. She talks about plans, but she never actually accomplishes anything." My father looked down at the table. My mother gave me a warning look. I could feel everyone's attention on me. Then Blythe leaned closer. "You're honestly useless when it comes to real life." The words hit harder because she said them so easily. A few people laughed nervously. I looked at my parents, hoping one of them would say something. Neither did. Instead, my mother quietly said, "Marlowe, please don't make tonight uncomfortable." I stared at her. I hadn't made anything uncomfortable. I had barely spoken. Something inside me went quiet. I pushed my chair back. "I'm going home." I reached for my coat. Then the restaurant doors opened. Blythe suddenly sat straighter. Two executives entered first. Behind them came Everett Calloway. I had never met him face to face, but I knew immediately who he was. Blythe's expression changed. She looked ready to impress her boss. Everett scanned the room. Then his eyes stopped on me. His entire expression softened. He walked directly toward my table. "Ms. Whitaker," he said warmly, "I've been looking forward to meeting you in person." I barely had time to respond. He extended his hand. I shook it. The entire table went silent. Blythe's smile disappeared. Everett kept his hand extended until I accepted it. Then he looked around the table. "I hope I'm not interrupting anything important," he said. Nobody answered. His attention returned to me. "I wanted to speak with you because your proposal was reviewed by our senior leadership." My heart started beating faster. "My proposal?" "Yes. Your operational plan." I stared at him. I thought that project had been canceled. It wasn't. I didn't know what to say. Everett explained that the proposal had gone through several reviews. He said the strategy was one of the strongest his company had received that year. I felt confused. If my work was that good, why had everything suddenly stopped? Everett seemed to understand my question. "We found inconsistencies in the information used to evaluate your proposal," he said. My stomach tightened. He explained that some information about my experience and professional background had been presented to the company. It wasn't accurate. Someone had made me look less qualified than I really was. Blythe shifted in her chair. I noticed. Everett continued speaking calmly. "We started looking into the matter because the information didn't match what we found in our records." He didn't name anyone. "Not there. Not in front of our family." Instead, he looked directly at me. "Your professional integrity was never in question, Ms. Whitaker." Those words nearly broke me. For weeks, I had wondered whether I had failed. Now someone was telling me the opposite. Then Everett gave me another surprise. "I actually knew your work before you submitted this proposal." I frowned. He explained that he had worked with my former company years earlier. He remembered a system I had helped create. "I remembered your name," he said. "When this project came up, I specifically asked our team to consider you." I couldn't believe it. The opportunity hadn't appeared because of luck. I hadn't been given a chance because of someone else's favor. I had earned it. Across the table, Blythe looked completely different. For once, she had nothing to say. I looked at her quietly. I hope you choose your next words carefully. Then I sat down. The next morning, Everett asked me to meet with his legal and executive team. I arrived carrying a folder I had prepared over the past few weeks. Inside were copies of every important document I had saved. I placed everything on the conference table. Emails, project notes, dates and times, financial records, messages, copies of the information that had been used against me. I had saved those things because something inside me had warned me not to throw anything away. Now I understood why. The legal team carefully reviewed the documents. They compared the claims made about me with the records from my previous work. One by one, the lies started falling apart. Then they found something that made my hands go cold. Several of the false claims had come from information accessed through Blythe's workplace. I stared at the documents. For a moment, I couldn't speak. I had spent years making excuses for Blythe. I told myself she was competitive. I told myself she was insecure. I told myself that underneath everything, she still loved me. But this was different. She hadn't simply said cruel things about me. She had taken steps to hurt my career. She had tried to make other people doubt my ability because she was afraid I might succeed. I felt a deep sadness more than anger. She was my sister. I had helped her when she needed me. And while I was doing that, she had been working against me. Everett gave me time to process everything. Then he spoke carefully. You don't have to continue with this. You can walk away and protect your peace. I looked at the documents in front of me. Walking away would have been easier, but it would also leave the truth buried. I finally shook my head. No, I want the truth on record. I agreed to cooperate fully with the investigation. For the first time, I wasn't fighting Blythe. I was standing up for myself. And that decision changed everything. Blythe was called into a private meeting at Callaway Meridian Group a few days later. She walked into the room expecting good news. She had spent years believing that her position inside the company made her untouchable. Instead, she found several senior employees waiting for her. A folder sat in the center of the table. Blythe looked at it. What is this? One of the executives told her that the company had completed its initial review. They asked her about information connected to Marlowe's proposal. Blythe immediately denied knowing anything. I never interfered with her work. Then she changed her story. She claimed Marlowe was jealous of her career and had created the whole situation to make her look bad. But the documents told a different story. Employees confirmed that Blythe had repeatedly spoken about Marlowe in a negative way. Some remembered her calling Marlowe inexperienced. Others confirmed that Blythe had questioned whether Marlowe deserved the opportunity. Then another issue came up. The company had reviewed one of Blythe's previous projects. Records showed that she had exaggerated her role and accepted credit for work completed by other employees. The room became silent. Blythe's confident attitude disappeared. For years, she had built her career around looking successful. Now people were finally examining what was underneath that image. When she returned home, the situation became even worse. My father, Graham, still defended her. She made mistakes, he said. That doesn't mean she's a bad person. I listened quietly. Then my mother turned toward me. Marlowe, why didn't you tell us what was happening? I looked at her for several seconds. I could have listed every insult. Every time they had chosen Blythe. Every time I had been told to stay quiet. Instead, I gave her the truth in one sentence. Because every time Blythe hurt me, you asked me to understand her. Nobody ever asked her to understand me. Nobody spoke. My father looked away. My mother lowered her eyes. For the first time, they couldn't pretend they hadn't seen the difference between us. A week later, Everett called me into his office. He placed a new contract on the desk. We would like you to lead this project, he said. I looked at the papers but didn't sign them. The old version of me might have accepted immediately. This time I knew better. I read every page carefully. Then I told Everett what I needed. I wanted fair payment for my work. I wanted clear authority over the project. Most importantly, I wanted complete independence. I didn't want anyone inside the company controlling my decisions or using my work for their own benefit. Everett listened without arguing. When I finished, he nodded. Those are reasonable terms. We shook hands. Within weeks, I began building a small team. I hired people who were good at their work and didn't care about titles or appearances. We studied the company's operations and found several areas where time and money were being wasted. Slowly, we fixed them. The results were clear. Costs dropped. Work became faster. Departments communicated better. Senior executives began asking for my opinion before making important decisions. For the first time, I wasn't trying to convince anyone that I was capable. My work was doing that for me. Blythe, meanwhile, had lost her position. One afternoon, she came to see me. She looked tired and embarrassed. "I need your help," she said. I knew how much courage it must have taken for her to say those words. For years, she had wanted the power I now had. But I didn't want to use it against her. "I don't want you to lose everything," I told her. "I just don't want you to destroy me anymore." She looked at me with anger. "So you're going to punish me?" "No." "Then why won't you help me?" "Because helping you doesn't mean fixing the consequences of your choices." She called me cruel. I stayed calm. Consequences aren't cruelty, Blythe. They're what happens when people refuse to take responsibility. She had no answer. For once, I didn't feel guilty for protecting myself. Several months passed before we all sat around the same table again. This time, everything felt different. I arrived without worrying about what anyone thought of me. My business was doing well, my work was respected, and I had finally stopped measuring my worth through my family's approval. Blythe arrived later. She was quieter than I had ever seen her. There was no proud smile or long speech about her career. She simply sat down and looked at her hands. After dinner, Dad cleared his throat. "Marlo, I owe you an apology." I looked at him. He admitted that he had dismissed me too many times because I wasn't as loud about my achievements as Blythe. "I should have listened to you," he said. Mom began crying. She told me that she had made a mistake by confusing Blythe's confidence with success. "I thought you were quiet because you weren't sure of yourself," she said. "I didn't understand that you were simply different." I didn't know how to respond. Then Blythe finally spoke. "I was afraid of you." I looked at her. She said she had always felt threatened whenever I succeeded quietly. "You never needed attention," she said. "You just kept getting better. And I hated that people might eventually notice." Her words were painful, but I listened. "I understand that you were hurting," I told her. "But understanding you doesn't erase what happened." She nodded slowly. I wasn't ready to pretend everything was normal. I told her that if we were going to have any relationship, there had to be boundaries. No more insults. No interference with my work. No manipulation. And no using our parents to pressure me. Blythe agreed. For the first time, nobody argued with me. I realized then that revenge had never been about destroying my sister. It was about refusing to let her destroy me again. I didn't need her career to fail. I didn't need my family to praise me. I only needed the freedom to live my life without constantly defending my worth. And finally, I had it. Sometimes I still think about that night in the restaurant. I remember the table. I remember the faces around me. Most of all, I remember Blythe looking at me and calling me useless. At that moment, her words felt like a final judgment. For years, I had allowed other people's opinions to make me question myself. I thought success meant having people notice you, praise you, and approve of your choices. I was wrong. The handshake from Everett didn't suddenly make me valuable. I already had value. What mattered was that someone outside my family finally recognized the work I had been doing quietly for years. My consulting business continued to grow. I became more confident in my decisions and more careful about who I allowed into my professional life. Eventually, I started helping other people who had been underestimated at work or treated as if their efforts didn't matter. I understood what it felt like to work hard while nobody noticed. My relationship with Blythe remained complicated. We weren't suddenly close again. There were still things we couldn't forget, but there was no longer the same fear between us. I stopped competing with her. I stopped trying to prove myself. I stopped waiting for her approval. That was the real victory. When I think about revenge now, I see it differently. The strongest revenge isn't making someone suffer. It isn't watching them lose everything. Sometimes revenge is simply becoming so secure in yourself that their words no longer control how you see yourself. I can still picture that restaurant. I remember standing there while people laughed. Then I remember Everett walking toward me. He extended his hand and told me he had been looking for someone exactly like me. For years, I believed I needed my sister to acknowledge my worth. I finally understood that I never did. I had been building my life long before anyone noticed. And the woman my family once called useless had quietly become someone they could no longer overlook. Sometimes the person your family calls useless is the person who quietly becomes impossible to replace.